I'm Jeremiah Knope, and this is episode number 11 in this daily video series on politics and the church leading up to the 2024 presidential election that's just a few short days away. We are on the brink of one of the most historic elections in the history of this country, the outcome of which will be determined by professing Christians. According to the most recent statistics, 68% of Americans identify themselves as Christian. And now it'd be easy to get into the weeds with a statistic like this. My only point in mentioning it is to say that the majority of legal U.S. citizens self-identify as Christian, meaning the outcome of this election will be determined by professing Christians, by how we vote or if we vote. So as a Christian, talking to Christians, we've spent the last 2 weeks looking at biblical issues at stake in the upcoming election, because biblical issues ought to be our number one concern when it comes to how we plan to vote. As Christians, our highest allegiance is to King Jesus. And so we shouldn't be voting as Republicans or Democrats or independents. We should be voting as Christians. As Christians, we want Christ to be exalted in this land. We want His word to be the cornerstone on which our future is built. We want His truth and His laws to be the foundation of our legal system and the substance of our education. And if this isn't our desire, then we need to stop calling ourselves Christian. And now there are many people who would balk at what I've just said. They would respond by saying that religion is fine if you just keep it to yourself. Like, you don't need to bring it into the voting booth. It's okay to have faith in something so long as you just keep it private. But that's not the way faith or belief or religion works. Your system of belief inevitably impacts everything you are and everything you do. And we could give a million of examples, because this is literally true about every area of your life. What kinds of foods you eat, how you manage your time, how you engage your family, how you educate your children, how you treat your friends, what kind of music you listen to, how involved you are in your local church, what you think about politics, and everything in between. We do something because we believe something. So I wash the dishes because I believe it will make my wife happy. I read the Bible to my children at night because I believe it's good for them. I believe it's good for their soul. I exercise at the gym because I believe it's healthy for my body. You know, I don't watch certain TV shows. I don't listen to certain kinds of music because I believe it's toxic to my soul. I help plan the vacation with my family because I believe that we will enjoy that time together. Look, the USA exists because people believed in the dream of religious freedom. Our founding fathers believed that the freedom of religion was better for the flourishing of a society than the religious oppression they were under. And this belief impacted not only what they thought, but also what they did. Like, what compels a grad student to give up years of their life to a classroom? A belief in something. What compels the soldier to go to war? What compels the fiance to accept his proposal? What compels a parent to educate their children at home? What compels the young man to apply for this job instead of that job? What compels you to join this church instead of that church? And the answer to all these questions comes back to, what do you believe? Privatized belief is one of the greatest lies our country has ever been told. It simply does not exist. In other words, what you believe about God, about His Word, about the gospel, about humanity, will inevitably impact how you vote. You can't help it. If we truly are followers of Christ, if we truly do believe in His Word, then that belief will inevitably shape the way we vote next Tuesday. On the flip side, how you vote will also reveal something about what you truly believe. Like what we believe the most important things in this country are. And all of that is just a really long introduction to get to the issue that I want to talk about in this episode, and that is the freedom of religion. I've intentionally waited to talk about this issue specifically in this video series until now because it really is a culmination of all the things that we've been talking about for the past 10 episodes. And now everybody watching this video knows that the freedom of religion is a foundational constitutional guarantee that stands as one of the pillars of our great nation. The First Amendment says, quote, "Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof." End quote. Now, the first question to ask is, what did our founding fathers mean by the word religion? So the Constitution was written in 1787, and so their understanding of the word religion would have come from Samuel Johnson's 1773 dictionary. So how does Samuel Johnson define religion? Here it is. Religion, quote, "Virtue as founded upon reverence of God and expectation of future rewards and punishments." Okay? So the words virtue and expectation are key. They didn't see religion as just a Sunday thing. Those who wrote the Constitution understood religion to be a way of life. That's what virtue means. Your moral character. And this virtue, this moral character, this way of life is based on what you believe to be true about what God has said. So on this understanding, they said that Congress is not allowed to make any law that will prohibit a person from freely exercising a life of virtue that is based on what they believe to be true about God's Word. And now, anybody with a 4th grade education has come across the First Amendment, but there are two things about this freedom that many people don't realize. That's what I want to talk about in this video. Number one, the majority of people I talk with have no idea just how much our nation's economic success is tied to the Christian faith. Most Americans have such a shallow, truncated grasp on what caused our country to become the greatest civilization in the history of humanity. And so they think that our freedom of religion is just like a side benefit of our Constitution, a perk, if you will. So I want to talk about that. The second thing I want to talk about is the fact that most people don't realize just how fragile this freedom is at the moment. We are quite literally just one election away from losing the freedom that made our country what it is today. Of course, you won't see this issue on the ballot or on any campaign website, but it's there. Our freedom of religion is on the ballot in this 2024 presidential election, and so I want to talk about that. All right, first, what do I mean when I say that, quote, our nation's economic success is tied to the Christian faith? Okay, what I mean is that everything special and unique about America is a result of our Christian heritage. back way up. From the dawn of the church, Christianity has transformed every culture it touches, starting with the culture in ancient Rome, which is where the church was born. Ancient Rome was a brutal culture, to say the very least. Human life was expendable. Torture and human brutality were just forms of public entertainment. Think Gladiator, Colosseum. Women were just seen as property. Unwanted children were left on the hills outside the city to die. I mean, Rome was wicked and evil and a cruel society for centuries, but it didn't stay that way forever. Why not? Christians. As babies were left on the hills to die, which existed, by the way, as a normal and legal practice in Rome, think ancient abortion, Christians began going to the hills to rescue the babies left to die and then began adopting them into their own families. Why? Because their religion taught them that life is sacred and that we are to open our homes and open our lives for the orphans. James 1:27. Women were elevated in the Christian communities. Why? Because their religion taught them that men and women were created by God with equal worth and dignity. The Roman society began to care for the vulnerable for the first time ever. Why? Because Christian religion was spreading across the land, and it taught that we are to care for those in need. Virtue and morality became something that was valuable in the Roman Empire. Rulers began to prioritize the flourishing of their citizens, and all this was the result of the spread of Christianity across the land. Christianity turned the Roman Empire upside down. It's not a matter of opinion, it's history. And you see this same trajectory in every society on the planet that has been influenced by Christianity, including the United States. Why does our Pledge of Allegiance celebrate, quote, liberty and justice for all? Where does that come from? Well, I can tell you where it doesn't come from. It doesn't come from an evolutionary worldview where life is just about the survival of the fittest. Liberty and justice for all is a biblical concept that was embedded into the fabric of our nation by men and women who saw this truth in the Word of God. We already mentioned in a previous video that slavery was a part of our nation's history, just as it was part of the Roman Empire during the time that the New Testament was being written. So the question is, what brought about the end of the slave trade in America and the rest of Western civilization? The answer? Christianity. It was the work of Christians like William Wilberforce, whose Christian faith taught him that all men are created equal, which means all men have unalienable rights, including life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So what brought about an end to the global slave trade? The answer is Christianity, or religion, if you will. There is nothing good in this country that prospered apart from Christianity. All of our major schools were originally Christian universities, all of them. Our hospitals and healthcare that were founded by the Christian faith. They still have Christian in their name. Our charity organizations that are providing aid all over the world were founded by Christians. You see the evidence of the Christian foundation in our language, though that's quickly changing. You see it in our art and in our architecture, though that is quickly changing. You see the mark of Christianity in our music and in our literature. That's quickly changing. Christianity was the foundation of our holidays, though that is quickly changing. You see the influence of Christianity in our courtrooms and in our government buildings, in the Pledge of Allegiance, in a presidential inauguration that they placed the hand on the Bible. You see it in when we give oaths, or at least you used to. You see it in our marriage ceremonies. You see it in our currency. In God we trust. It's all over our founding documents. Why? Here's the question. Why should you vote as a Christian? Because there's no such thing as America apart from Christianity. The freedom of religion and the influence of Christianity in particular is not just a side benefit of the Constitution. It is the very foundation of our country's existence. You take this freedom away and our nation as we know it cannot exist because the foundation of everything that we have built is gone. Careful, Jeremiah. You're sounding a little bit like a Christian nationalist. Good. Then we understand each other. The second thing that I want to talk about is the fact that most people don't realize just how fragile this freedom is at the moment. We've already hinted at this in previous videos, so let me just give a couple of examples of what I mean. On October 23rd, one candidate said that if they are elected into the presidency, abortion would become enshrined into law and that no exemptions would be made for those with religious convictions. Okay, what does that mean? It means that medical professionals would be criminalized if they refused to conduct an abortion that goes against their religion because it's murder. So what is this? It's the removal of their religious freedom. This same candidate has lobbied for the Do No Harm Act and the Equality Act, which would end up criminalizing Christians for taking a stand against the LGBTQ agenda. In other words, bakers would be criminalized for refusing to decorate a cake for a homosexual wedding, and pastors would be criminalized for refusing to conduct a wedding ceremony for a lesbian couple on the grounds that it goes against their foundational religious beliefs. What is this? It's the removal of religious freedom. The governor of Minnesota is already in the process of making it mandatory for Minnesota school teachers to affirm and incorporate critical race theory and LGBTQ ideology into their classrooms. And if a teacher refuses to comply on the basis that it goes against her religious beliefs, she will be vilified and criminalized and lose her job or not get hired. What is this? It's the removal of religious freedom. Now again, there are many who would vilify a video like this as nothing more than fear-mongering and conspiracy theory. Like removing our religious freedom? Come on, this is the United States of America. That could never happen here. That could never happen here. No, what you think could never happen here is happening here. Just last Tuesday, a dad who lives here in Minnesota, which just a few miles northwest of where I live, was arrested for the crime of talking to a journalist about how his 3 younger children were systematically alienated from him so that his daughter could be sexualized and steered toward gender transition in secret without him knowing. Now, I don't know this man personally, but I know what it's like to be a dad with younger children, and so I can only imagine what it would be like to have my children taken away from me and to have sexualized ideologies drilled into them by child protective services and woke therapists and LGBTQ teachers and administrators, and then to be thrown into jail in the process of speaking out about it. I mean, you imagine that this is you. And these are your kids. These are your children. And you're trying to raise them to know God and to love his ways. But with all the sexual messages that are bombarding them from every direction, you imagine that your adolescent child gets lured into this trans community. And so as a parent, for the sake of your child's future, you immediately seek to intervene before they get to a point where the damage is physically irreversible. But here in Minnesota, thanks to the Trans Health Refuge bill that was passed by our governor, any efforts on your part to protect your child from this transition are now viewed as child abuse, since you are trying to prevent them from getting the, quote, gender-affirming health care that they need. This could never happen here. Is happening here. Now, in this country, in my state, under this administration, and it's only going to get worse if this candidate gets elected. Again, she made it clear on national television that Bible-believing Christians have no place on her platform and will therefore have no voice in the decisions that she makes and in the laws that she passes, which is why J.D. Vance has called her the biggest threat to religious liberty that we've had in at least a generation. And I don't think he's wrong. Religious freedom is not just part of a benefit package of being an American citizen. It is the heart and soul of our country's existence. It is the single greatest reason for the unparalleled success in our country throughout human history. And it's on the ballot next week. So for the love of your family, for the love of your church, for the love of your neighbors, and for the love of God, go vote.